While millions of people are doom scrolling through political Twitter at 2 a.m., arguing with strangers in comment sections and having literal panic attacks over election results, there's a massive group of people who just don't care that much. And according to neuroscience and psychology, their brains might actually be wired differently. Stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you will completely change how you see the politically obsessed people in your life. Here's the thing nobody talks about. Not obsessing over politics doesn't make you uninformed. It doesn't mean you lack civic responsibility, and it definitely doesn't mean something's wrong with you. But there is something fascinating happening in your brain that's completely different from the people who can't go 5 minutes without checking the latest political news. Let's start with the obvious question. Why do so many people care so much? Humans are tribal creatures. For thousands of years, being part of a group with shared beliefs meant survival. Your tribe protected you from enemies, helped you navigate threats, kept you alive. And politics? It's basically modern tribalism with better talking points. When someone engages with political content that aligns with their views, their brain releases dopamine, the reward chemical, the same neurotransmitter that makes you feel good when you eat chocolate or get likes on social media. Their brain literally rewards them for consuming information that confirms what they already believe. But here's where it gets interesting. People who don't obsess over politics often have what psychologists call lower identity fusion with ideological groups. Their sense of self isn't as strongly tied to their political beliefs. They're more likely to say, "My political views are part of me, but they're not who I am." And there's actual research on this. A 2018 study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people with low political engagement showed significantly less in-group bias. Translation: they don't automatically hate people who vote differently. They can actually have friends across the political spectrum without having an existential crisis. But wait, it gets weirder. Because what happens in the brain of a political news junkie is legitimately concerning. You know that feeling when you're scrolling social media and you see a notification? That little hit of anticipation? That's dopamine. Political news addicts get that same hit constantly. Every breaking news alert, every poll update, every scandal, every debate clip. Constant microdoses of outrage and validation. Studies using fMRI scans show that consuming political content that outrages you activates the same brain regions as physical threats. Your amygdala, your brain's fear center, lights up like a Christmas tree. And here's the kicker. The outrage is what makes it so addictive. Your brain evolved to pay attention to threats. A saber-toothed tiger was a real threat, but your brain can't distinguish between a genuine physical danger and a political opinion you find offensive. It triggers the same fight-or-flight response, the same stress hormones, the same addictive cycle of threat detection and relief-seeking. People who don't obsess over politics, their threat detection systems aren't constantly activated by ideological content. They've somehow maintained the ability to distinguish between actual dangers to their well-being and abstract political disagreements. And this might be partly genetic. Research suggests that variations in genes related to dopamine regulation and threat sensitivity can predict political engagement levels. Think about that. Your complete indifference to the latest political scandal might literally be in your DNA.
But there's another layer. Political obsessives experience something called moral outrage addiction. Every time they encounter something that violates their values, they get a hit of righteous indignation. It feels good in a twisted way. It confirms they're on the right side. It validates their worldview. When they share that outrage on social media, they get social reinforcement. Likes, comments, retweets from their tribe. More dopamine, more validation. The cycle repeats. People who don't obsess over politics are less likely to engage in this emotional roller coaster. They're more consistent in their emotional baseline. They don't need constant external validation of their beliefs. Their self-concept is more stable, less dependent on what's trending on Twitter. Now, before the comment section explodes, I'm not saying one way is better than the other, but I am saying there are legitimate psychological differences, and understanding them is fascinating. Here's something that sounds contradictory. Politically engaged people often score higher on certain measures of conscientiousness. They genuinely care about society, about making things better, about being informed citizens. That's admirable. So why don't non-political people feel that same urgency? It's about anxiety tolerance and locus of control. Everyone has a limited capacity for worry and concern. Politically disengaged people often direct that energy toward things they can actually control: their relationships, their work, their local community, their personal growth. A 2020 study found that people with low political engagement reported significantly higher internal locus of control. They believe their actions matter more in their immediate sphere than in the abstract political realm. They're getting their sense of meaning and purpose from different places: creative projects, personal achievements, direct helping of others, intellectual exploration. Their brains are seeking the same things: meaning, impact, connection. They're just finding it somewhere else. And let's be honest about something else. For some people, not caring about politics is actually a protective mechanism. Maybe they grew up in a household where political arguments destroyed relationships. Maybe they've experienced the burnout of constant outrage. Maybe they're pushing back against the toxicity of political discourse. Maybe they just never understood why grown adults would end friendships over who they voted for. Your indifference might have a backstory. Or maybe you just find it exhausting. Both are valid. But here's the part that explains so much about why political obsessives and non-political people sometimes can't understand each other. It comes down to how you experience agency and influence. Political obsessives believe that staying informed and engaged is a moral duty, that democracy requires constant vigilance, that their attention and outrage somehow matter in the grand scheme of things. It gives them a sense of participation in something bigger than themselves. People who don't obsess often think, why would I spend hours consuming information about things I can't control, getting outraged by people I'll never meet, arguing about policies I can't influence? They're not wrong, but neither are the politically engaged. It's just two different approaches to the human need for meaning and impact. One group finds purpose in political awareness and activism. The other finds it in direct action, personal relationships, creative work, local community involvement. Here's what researchers call abstract engagement versus concrete impact. Political obsessives invest emotional energy in macro-level issues, national policies, global events, ideological battles. Non-political people prefer investing energy where they can see direct results: helping a neighbor, creating something tangible, improving their own skills, building actual relationships. Neither is superior. They're just different strategies for navigating citizenship and meaning. Psychologist Jonathan Haidt, who studied moral psychology and political polarization, found that people process political information through fundamentally different moral frameworks. But he also found that some people simply have lower sensitivity to political moral triggers altogether. Their brains aren't as reactive to political stimuli. And here's what's really interesting. People who don't obsess over politics often report higher life satisfaction and lower anxiety levels. They're not spending hours every day experiencing someone else's outrage. They're not doom-scrolling through catastrophic predictions. They're engaged in their own lives, present in their own experiences. A 2022 study found that reducing political news consumption by 50% led to significant improvements in mood, stress levels, and relationship quality. There's something quietly radical about protecting your mental space from constant political warfare. So what does all this mean? If you don't obsess over politics, you're not a bad citizen. You're not uninformed or apathetic. You're just different. Your brain's reward system, your threat detection mechanisms, your moral outrage triggers, they're all calibrated differently. And that's perfectly okay. You can care about issues without making politics your identity. You can vote without arguing online. You can have values without needing to broadcast them constantly. You can be a good person without being perpetually outraged. The next time someone asks, "Did you see what happened in Congress?" and you genuinely could not care less, remember, you're not broken. You're not ignorant. You're just playing a different game. One that might, just maybe, lead to better mental health and more meaningful impact in your actual life. If this resonated with you, you're probably going to love why people who genuinely love being alone aren't lonely at all. They're experiencing something most people never understand. And their brains might hold the secret to a kind of contentment that has nothing to do with how many people are around them. Click one of these videos to find out why solitude might be the most misunderstood human need.